Hey, good morning friends. My name's Annette with Sunbeam Fabric Art. Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to take you through this foundation paper pieced raven. I designed this block myself in Electric Quilt 8. This is an intermediate block, and the block took me about 3 hours to put together. If you're new to foundation paper piecing, check some links in my description. Let's take a look at this actual pattern. It's 6 pages. Page 1 is just the title page and it has the picture. Page 2 has the picture divided into the sections plus the assembly instructions. And then the last 4 pages are the actual pattern pieces. This pattern only has one piece that overlaps 2 pages, and I will show you in just a second how I put those 2 pieces together. My first step in assembling any foundation paper piece pattern is cutting apart the actual sections. Here's a close-up of the section that overlaps 2 pages. You can see I'm cutting a zigzag line, and I'm making sure that that line is still going to be visible. Then all I have to do is lay the piece with the zigzags on top of the other piece. I match up that vertical line and the horizontal pattern lines and tape it together. For this bird, I chose 2 fabrics. I chose a blue pattern for my background, and this just came from my stash. And then I had this black, kind of cloudy fabric to use for the bird. The next thing I did was cut all the fabric that I needed for each section. You want to make sure that each piece within the section has plenty of space for seam allowances and angles. And when you're cutting these pattern pieces, if your pattern is face up, your fabric should be wrong side up. As I cut each piece for each section, then I stack those up in number order on top of each pattern piece, and I'm ready to go to the sewing machine when I'm all done. Now this section is pretty easy. I'm going to take you through it. It only has 3 pieces. It has a small black piece, a small blue piece, and then a large blue piece. So piece 1 and 2 are a black and a blue. I'm going to put those right sides together. Next, I'm placing those on the back of my pattern piece. And I am making sure that those 2 pieces of fabric overlap the stitch line. I'm going to stitch the line between piece 1 and piece 2, then I will press the fabric open and I'll be ready to add piece 3. And I know it's tedious, but after every piece that you add, you'll definitely want to trim away all the excess thread each time. So here I'm showing you that stitch line on the back of the fabric. Now I have a little excess, so I'm going to fold on the seam line, fold that paper down, and I am going to trim away excess bulk. Now it's time to add that third piece. It's kind of a large piece, and I'm laying it wrong side up on the pattern just so I can make sure it's going to cover. And I realize I can trim away some of the sides of this piece. That'll make it easier for me to see exactly where I need to lay this piece out. This piece is going to attach with an angle. Angles are a little tricky. I fold the fabric up on the seam line and kind of press it a little bit with my finger, and then I'm going to trim enough that I have a seam allowance, And this way it's going to make it easier for me to flip this around to the back side and get that lined up correctly. So with that third piece overlapping my stitch line, enough to have a seam allowance, I'm going to stitch that line between piece 2 and piece 3. Then I should be able to flip this fabric and press it flat once I trim away the bulk. And here you see I'm folding the paper down on that stitch line that I just sewed, and that gives me my guideline to trim away excess bulk before I press this open. Now I'll set this aside, and when I'm done with all the sections, I will go back and trim these. Each section is essentially the same. I'm adding pieces of fabric in order, starting with 1 and 2, and then I just keep adding pieces to the back of the pattern piece. When the section is done, I set it aside and start on the next section. With all the sections completed, it's time to trim. With larger pieces, I use a cutting mat and a ruler, and I'm trimming on the dotted line, which is my seam allowance. With smaller pieces, I will just hold them in my hand and trim those with my scissors. I took a little bit of time and picked out the scraps of fabric that I felt were big enough to add to my scrap pile. With all the sections completed and trimmed, it's time to follow the instructions. For the first part, I'm going to sew B, C, and D together and then add A, and that will be part 1 complete. I like to lay the pieces that I'm going to be attaching out right side up, just so I can make sure I've got them in the right spot, the right order. So I'm taking B and C, putting them right sides together, then I'm going to use my clips to hold those in place until I get them stitched together. Now that I have B and C together, I can add piece D. With those three together, I'm going to go ahead and remove the paper from the back of B, C, and D, just because I don't need it to attach piece A. Now piece A, when I attach it to B, C, and D, does have one seam that needs to match up, and that is the top of this raven's head. So I will put clips in place at the 1/4 inch seam line, verify that that raven's head is going to match up with the other side, and I'll readjust if I need to. But it looked good, so I went ahead and stitched the seam. I continued working my way through this pattern, following the instructions on how to assemble it section by section. The bottom part, part 4, was the most complicated, so I kind of laid that out, you see in the upper screen, just to make sure everything stayed true and that I was putting the right pieces together at the right time. And this pattern made it pretty easy to just tear off the paper after each addition. And last, it was just a matter of putting the 4 parts together, and then the block was complete. And you can see I'm still using clips extensively to match up pieces of the raven's body that need to go together with the next piece. I'll leave a link in the description to this pattern on my Etsy shop. If you're enjoying my channel, I invite you to subscribe and hit that like button. You can also hit the bell icon to get notified of new content. I love the way this raven block turned out. I hope you do too. I hope you had fun, and I hope to see you back again real soon.